bringing you the best in country and Irish music. This is your station, irishcountrymusicradio.com.
We're young when you and I were young.
There you have it. That is, of course, Foster and Allen and the song called Maggie. Now, would you believe it? I have the great pleasure of, I have a gentleman on the line known far and wide as half of Foster and Allen, and of course it is Mr. Mick Foster himself. Hello there, Mick. How are you?
How are you going, sir? Are you well?
Not too bad at all, not too bad at all. And you?
Oh, sure, does not bother. I mean, keeping my head down from COVID and ducking and diving, and we're avoiding it so far anyway.
Well, I'll tell you, I am absolutely delighted to be chatting to your own good self, because as long as I remember, there has been Foster and Allen music on the wireless, as the fella says, from way back when, and I didn't think that the day would come when I would have you on the line and be having a chat with you. So very excited I am, very excited.
And put this one now, it's very easy to excite you if that's what excites you. We're on the go since 75, and we were rooting along as best we could. We had 45 years done this year, and then of course we had decided we had to kind of cut down to just Ireland and the UK. Last year we did Australia for the 20th time, and we says, look, we have enough. We won't bother with Australia or New Zealand or South Africa or Canada anymore, or America. We'll just concentrate and do a month in Ireland and a month in the UK. And we did our month in Ireland in January, and we were to go to the UK in April, and sure, COVID arrived in March and told us to stay at home.
Yeah.
That was about the height of it.
And as persuasive argument that they were able to put in as well, this COVID fella.
That's for certain. You can't argue with that two-handed,
Yeah. So you're after mentioning Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. There's a number of different places like that you have played together as a duo, yourself and Tony Allen, of course. And bring us back, you were two lads from up in the Midlands of Ireland, and you managed to take on the world with music. So
two lads from the bog. When we started, we were a cross between a Cayley band and a ballad group, and there was only two of us at that stage, and there was only two of us for 7 years. And then we got in two other lads to play with us, and one of them, that was in December 1982, and one of them stayed with us for 18 years, and the other fella is still with us. So, and then we had we had a drummer for 14 or 15 years, and then Myra Fraser, as in my wife, she's with us for 28 years.
The boss,
and as I say, her and I do an odd bit of eating together,
Yeah.
But, when we're not, Tony and myself is not touring, which is, well, look, everything is non-existent at the minute, but we do, and Myra and myself, we do, she's originally from Scotland, so we'd, do a bit of Irish music and Irish ballads, and she'd sing Scottish ballads, and we'd have a bit of crack that way,
So, as you were saying there, you started off as a duo and that, and you were touring around and that, and then the Rambles of Spring, I believe, was that the first single that you released? That would be
that was the first single. We recorded an LP at the time, and maybe a couple between 75 and 78, and then we recorded this song written by Tommy Macon in 78, and it didn't chart, but it was what they call a turntable hit. It was played off the air for 6 months, I suppose. And then after that, a bunch of time, we did it, recorded it the next year, and it went to number 1 in Ireland. And then in 82, it got into the British top 20 in England and got us on top of the pops. And then MICK came after that, and it went to number 1 in Australia and New Zealand. And I Will Love You All My Life went to the top in the east side of Canada and South Africa. So it opened up a lot of markets to us, that we wouldn't be expecting, or, that there was nobody more surprised than me. And, Top of the Pops, I had never seen Top of the Pops until I was on it, because pop music and me wouldn't even be on a nodding acquaintanceship. I'd be a total trad Cayley man and a lot of old ballads. I wouldn't be into pop stuff at all, but look, it happened, and sure, look, after that, it kind of, I suppose, went haywire, if you like, far more haywire than we were expecting.
And of course, your outfits on Top of the Pops drew a lot of comment as well.
Oh, sure, look, they were more important than the song.
Yeah.
Because we had been wearing them from day one.
Yeah.
From 1975, a couple of lads, well, one of them was the late Jimmy McGee, the RTE man.
Yeah.
And Mick O'Riordan, a Cork man, was the other. He was one of the head men in IMRO. And at the time, they suggested that it didn't matter how good we were, we needed to be different. So they suggested, the Barry Lyndon film was out at the time, and they suggested that we wore then those outfits.
Sorry.
And we did. And then we used to go to America for the month of March, and for America we got them done in green. And what happened was we came straight from America to London to do Top of the Pops, and we had our green suits, and of course a lot of the media thought that we dressed up specially for Top of the Pops, which wasn't the case at all. As I say, we had been wearing them for 7 years, but as it turned out, we got so much publicity out of the suits that it was more important than the song.
Suits, of course, were kind of a leprechaun-y sort of a look to them.
Well, of course, sure, yeah. And the media decided they were leprechaun suits, and that we dressed up as leprechaun suits. And I mean, fair enough, our size would tend to be leprechauns because there's none of us too big, but it wasn't the case. But look, we didn't argue with them. We tried it at the start, but you might as well be telling the wind to stop blowing. So we just went with the flow and let them give us all the amount of publicity they could.
Yeah, as I say, there's no publicity, there's bad publicity, No.
And if they want to say that we dressed up especially for Top of the Pops as leprechauns, well, sure, look, there was no point in us arguing with them. And
of course, coming back from America in March, of course, you would have been, March would have been Patrick's Day time, so you...
Oh, sure, it was great. America, that time, 81, 82, it was mighty, for March, and any lugs like us from Ireland going out and talking with Bogman's accent, sure, there was a lay it was,
Yeah. You have a very you're well able to take yourself down anyway, but like...
Oh, but sure, look, I was doing an interview in Australia one time, and on the phone like this, and the one that was doing it, she says, I haven't a clue what you're saying, but keep talking, I love your accent. and another one time asked Myra, did I put on the accent especially for the stage? So I didn't really, I don't know how to talk any other way.
So Myra probably said, well, he must be on stage the whole time because he talks the same at home.
That's the only way he's able to talk, whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah, but sure, they always say don't lose your accent whatever happens.
Oh, well, I didn't, and I'll tell you, another great thing that I found, for myself anyway, was that I live where I grew up. And the lads I would go drink porter with, when you could go drink porter, are lads I went into national school with. And there'd be little or no point in you trying to impress them boys with a fancy twang, you know. You'd be told they remembered you when the knee was out of your trousers, you know, that kind of a way.
Yeah. There was a story told of a local man to myself, and he went away to England for a few days, well, for a fortnight or something, and when he came back, there was a cat walked across the kitchen floor, and he said, where did that long-tailed bugger come from?
Shocking to the world, Lord. Well, I suppose the country is full of gobshites, for want of a better word, but look, you pop at them and that's it, laugh at them. Let them get on with it.
So, but you said Maggie then was another big hit for you as well, and you've had, of course, Old Flames was another.
Yes, we had a load of them there. We had 5 or 6 in the British top 40 from about, well, from 82 until about 87. And from 82 to a kind of the present day, we had an album in the British top 100 except for 1 year.
Wow.
I think 1999 was the only year that we didn't have an album in the British top 100, and it was a religious album, so, well, not so much religious, but it was a kind of a gospel album, for want of a better word, and I suppose maybe wasn't it a religion or something, but
or
they
maybe just the fact
didn't throw it in anyway.
Yeah, I didn't have the sort of a trad sort of a feel to it.
No, they didn't have the kind of a carry-on that we'd like, but look at, other than that, we're after getting 45 great year over it, and as I say, nobody more surprised than we were.
Yes, well, it's like this, as you say, like, I mean, to have that sort of staying power there's not too many back, that were out in 75 that are still, except maybe Mick Jagger, a man with the same first name as yourself, but a little bit of a different.
Yeah, and the Chieftains and ones like that, but in general, we're starting to get kind of a bit afraid, because all the lads that were on the go, like Dermot O'Brien and Larry Cunningham and Macom and Clancy, they're all gone, like they're all dead. Yeah. So we're keeping our heads well down just in case.
in case the Grim Reaper's coming around with the side.
Oh, correct. And say, maybe you come play a tune for us,
Yeah, there's a vacancy up here, like there's a couple of stools there for you boys.
Yeah, they're fed up listening to the rest of them here, so it's better come, so we hope that they'll ignore us for another way.
Now, you'd be very famous, of course, for the accordion, which would be very popular on the station here as well, of course. The accordion would be a big hit. And what got you in on the old squeeze box yourself, or how did that come about, Mick?
Well, me grandmother in Kildare had an old gramophone, and she had a rake of these 78s of Jimmy Shand. And when I was a brat, 5 or 6, I'd be playing these gramophone records, and I was a fierce, great fan of Jimmy Shand's, and I wanted to do nothing else only play an accordion, and I went to. Then I started getting more interested in traditional Irish music, and the first flaciola I was ever at in my life was in Gorey in 1962, and I would have met a lot of great musicians from down that country over the years, people like George Ross and Tim Flood, the great hurler. He played the banjo as well, and Liam Gall. Look at the several lads, I can't remember their names now, and Con Buckley from Clonroach, I would have known Con fierce well. And I suppose my favourite sport is either hurling or handball, and I'm delighted to say that two great Wexford handballers, I'd be very great with them, Seamus Buggy and Dick Ling.
Yeah.
And they come to, any time we're playing in Wexford, the two boys and their wives come to the concerts, and we'd have a chat with them after, and we'd a chat every so often on the phone. They'd give me a buzz to see how we were getting on, or I'd ring them and whatever. But Tom Ferris, the Lord of mercy, he was another great accordion player from Wexford, and that I would have known well. But as I said, that's back when God was young.
When he was only a chap.
Even then, you go around in the short trousers at that stage.
So, you started playing the accordion then, and as you were saying, they're going to the flag holes and the like. And then what way did the music progress then between that and meeting up and starting to play with Tony Allen?
Well, Tony and myself played in a local group for a while, in 1967. And then he moved up to Monaghan to play with a band, himself and Tom, as in T.R. Dallas.
Yeah. And
I went resident in the pub in Mullingar. But in 1968, I seen the Alexander brothers from Scotland on the Late Late Show. Two brothers, one lad playing the accordion, the other fella playing the piano. And I says, Lord, there's an opening in Ireland for an Irish version.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to get Tony but he wasn't interested at the time. He was only interested in show bands and 7 or 8 piece bands, and didn't think that, a 2-piece would work. So anyway, as they say, constant tipping will wear a stone. And I kept him from I suppose 1968 and until 74, and he was in a bit of a band that stage, and he said to me, look, we have a bit of a band, and he said, I was going to say I played a bit on the sax. I dribbled into a sax. I could play a tune on it, but I couldn't blow it right. I couldn't get a good tone of it,
Yeah.
And it had squeak, and it had be, it'd be like a rabbit caught in a snare a lot of the time. And, but anyway, he said, if I went with the band, and if it wasn't a success after 6 months, he'd come with me. And, we were in London with the band, and in 1975, and a lad from Derry, it was after opening a pub in Kilburn Park, and we hadn't a whole lot of work on when we came home from England. There'd be no work. And he said, would yourself and Tony stay behind for the week and play in the pub, just the two of you with the keyboard and accordion, and sing a few yokes? And we did, and that we had a mighty week, and it convinced Tony that this would happen. So that was how that came about, and as I said, 45 years later, we're still on the go.
Still on the go, yeah. And the squeeze box, it's the piano you play, or
it is.
Yeah.
It is. No, and it's the piano box I play. I started on the button accordion, and look what I could rasp a bit on it, but the main rasp was the word. And then I learned this woman, a nun in Ballyman in County Longford. She was a piano teacher, and I whinged into her face to see would she teach me the accordion, and she said she didn't know much about it, but except she do as much as she could. So she showed me fingering and all that stuff like that, and so I could read a bit of music. And then a neighbour of ours, he was a button accordion player called Frank Galligan. Frank owned All Ireland in 1952, and he started, giving me tunes, and and keeping an eye on me. Frank would have been a first cousin of the great Joe Dolan.
Oh, right. Yeah, well, then.
Even though Frank was a pure trad man and Joe was a pop man, but he kind of guided me in the trad scene, and under his guidance, I was lucky enough to win 6 Leinster titles and 3 All-Irelands, and made a couple of LPs at the time, just a piano player and myself. And so look, and that's the way it kind of started out, and look, we're still blasting away.
And your preference, of course, would always be for the piano rather than the button, anyway.
Oh, well, I love button accordion players. Maybe not so much mad about the young crop, the accordion crop, who are great technicians, the same as the piano accordion players. They're great technicians, but to me, they wouldn't have. I don't know. I suppose it's with the internet and all this kind of carry on that people have a better chance of hearing other musicians. Where in my young day, you played like the lads around that you were learning from, or hearing, or whoever you heard on the radio on Kelly House or the Job of Journey Walk. That was about all that was on. And I suppose maybe the fact I learned from a button accordion player, I do often say he didn't make me any better than anyone else, but he made me different. Yeah. And that probably was a major help, because, in the early 60s in the trad world, a piano accordion was a dirty word. Yeah. You'd be better, you'd be more welcome at a session with a lamb-bag drum than a piano accordion. But this fella, as I say, made me that much different that old lads were accepting me, and kind of and the biggest compliment I ever got was from an old lad in Galway one time, and I met him somewhere, and he said, he said, I lost a bet on the head of you one time. And he says, how was that? He says, I bet with a lad that was a button accordion you were playing, and he said it was a piano accordion, and he says that it turned out I was sure it was a button accordion, but he was right. So, as I say, that to me was the best compliment I could get, that, because the older lads used to say the only piano accordion players, the lake, was the ones that you wouldn't know whether it was the piano accordion they were playing or not.
Yeah, because there's a difference in the sound, and even the difference in the way that you play.
There is, and the different way the lads, you work the bellows and all that. But I was talking about Liam Gall there. Liam writes, or used to write anyway for Ireland's Own. Liam was a great piano accordion player, but he was also a real good button accordion player. And, which
is unusual.
Very unusual. Very unusual. Now, I would have known lads that were good piano accordion players and maybe good Illian pipers and stuff like that, but I never knew anyone other than him that was good on a two-row and on a piano accordion. As a matter of fact, he bet me in an All-Ireland in 1965. We played against one another in the Leinster, and I bet him in the Leinster. And we went on to the All-Ireland then, with the same adjudicator, and Liam reversed the decision. So, there you go, we're that close to one another.
Yeah.
And, I think in 1967, there was a lad from Dundalk. He was a very good player, little bit eccentric, but kind of a good player. And doesn't he arrive to play in the competition, and he had no accordion. And me being a very nice fella from Mullingar, says to him, sure, look at, you can use my accordion, not a problem. Yeah. So he was very thankful for this, and then add insult to injury, he bet me with my own accordion. So, there you go. If your luck is out, your ducks will drown, isn't that it?
I was to say, no good turn goes unpunished, isn't that it?
Oh, that is for certain. That is for certain. So, that's about the height of it now.
And you would have been heavily involved in, would you have been much in the trad scene around Dublin, or would it have been more?
Oh Lord, no, all country gawks, all down Westmeath, Longford and Roscommon and that neck of the woods, you know. I mean, I was in Dublin several times in the Pipers Club and in the Church Street Club, but I would have known the Furies as in Finbar when we were Gossames. He's a year older than me, and I would have known him since I was 15 and he was 16, and I knew his father and I knew Eddie and Paul, the Lord of mercy on him, and George, and was a rake of other lads now that I can't just remember. As I say, old age is a horrid joke, and but Dublin wouldn't have featured as such with us now. We were, you know, when I was going to sessions first, I was going around with the accordion on the carrier of a bike, and you wouldn't be going too far with a piano accordion on the carrier of a bike.
Now, have you wanted to keep it from getting damaged anyway?
No, and apart from that, you keep yourself from getting damaged. Your loo would be out, you know, pushing a bike up and down hills and yokes like that. But then we started going around with lads that was older than me, had cars, and I started going around with them. But we still never went, you know, too far. You know, if you went 10 or 15 mile to a session, just that was an excursion, like, you know.
There was restrictions even back then, says you, Bob.
Honest to God, the restrictions was having the price of petrol for a start, and some of the tires would be like rabbit skins, you know. They wouldn't stop you going up a hill, never mind going down or on the flat.
So, and especially when, as you say, when your way of getting around was on a push bike or cadging a lift somewhere, like you weren't going to travel too far.
Well, that is for certain. So, but you look at the crack. When you be young, you be bulletproof.
Yeah, you wouldn't care. And so, but you made it big then over in the like of South Africa, the like of Australia, the like of New Zealand and that. When you first went to those places, the like of Australia, New Zealand and that, I'd say would it have been a mainly Irish crowd that you were playing to in those countries?
No, even in England, say the likes of England and Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, go for argument's sake, England. 80% of our audience in England would be English, and 80% of our audience in Australia and New Zealand would be natives of that country.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have got, you know, that out and out Irish lad. He would be more into, say, Brendan Shine and the Chieftains and lads like that rather than us, because you know, we had hit records in these places and people didn't know where we were from.
Yeah.
Because they only heard us on the radio, then they definitely never heard us talking. So they hadn't a clue where we were from. So with the result that just because you had a hit record they went to see you, and then if you're like everything else, it's up to yourself. You know, you get in any place once near enough, but it's up to yourself whether you get back anymore or not. Yeah.
If, as the fellow says, if you can get him in the door, it's your job to bring him back for the second one.
Correct. That's for certain. That is for certain. So, look, we were steep with luck, and that's the holy all of it. No other way of putting it. You could, you know, there was lads on the go at the time, and they were every bit as good as us, and maybe better. But, you know, the ball didn't hop right for them. And, as I say, it hopped right for us. And well, we had, I suppose one of the things we had going for us, we were never late for a gig in our lives. We never arrived jarred, and we never got jarred on the stage. And, that was I suppose a major card for us. You know, as I say, there was other lads on the go, and they might be late, and they mightn't turn up, and they might be drunk, and a whole lot of stuff. But as I said, just the look of the draw now, simple as that.
Yeah, reliability was a big thing, like.
Well, sure, look at it. All that was, everything was a hell, you know, throw everything in together and mix it up and it worked.
And of course, like, I mean, because I was actually talking to Daniel O'Donnell a few weeks ago as well. He was saying when he went over to England first that he was very surprised that the crowd that was over there he thought was going to be a mainly Irish crowd as well. But like your story, 80% of them, 90% were English. And
yeah, you see, if you, it doesn't matter where you're going, but if you're going in on the back of a hit record,
yeah,
people really don't know where you're from. They really don't care either. And, you know, when we'd be in Australia or New Zealand, you know, you get a certain amount of young people and from Ireland.
Yeah.
And the reason they'd come to hear you would be because you mightn't have known them, but you might know their father and mother or their granny or grandfather, and they'd be from maybe the Westmeath area. And the reason they'd come to hear you was that because you were a link with home.
Yeah.
And if you didn't talk like their father, you talked like their grandfather. And, you know, the same young lads, if we were playing in Mullingar, they'd go to Longford to get away from you. But when you were that far away, you were a link with home and the Ken. That was the only difference I found now over the years with young people coming to our shows. And then, of course, in the last 20 years, we used to be sticking out our chests and said, yes, you know, our audience are getting younger. But sure, there wasn't. It was us that was getting older. So,
it's just that the demographic was staying the same.
Exactly.
But they were looking a bit younger to you when you were looking out over the crowd. So,
yeah, honest to God, you think they're getting younger, but it's not that. It's us that's getting older, and they're the same as they were.
Yeah. And of course, away from the music, you do a little bit of the farming yourself, Mick, do you?
I used to one time. I don't really know. I used to breed horses and keep a few suckler cows and a lot of ewes and stuff like that. And the horses was my main interest. And we were breeding horses for 20 odd years. And then we bred nothing really that was worth a damn. And a trainer down the road here says to me, will you give up breeding horses, because you'll wind up with nothing, crooked fillies and lads with parrot mouths, and you take what you get. He says, if you want to, truck with young horses, he says, go to a sales and buy a yearling or something, at least you'll see what you're buying.
Yeah.
And that's what we started to do, but we have a 4-year-old in training now at the minute, and sure, look at her. She probably won't run until after Christmas, but sure, look, we're stupid enough to think that she might be middling, and that's a great way of getting rid of money. You know, the only way to become a millionaire with horses is to start as a multi-millionaire.
Yeah,
we went to Wexford races one time years ago, and we brought down 2 horses. One that was a cert to win the bumper, and another one that was going over fences for the first time.
Yeah. And
she was really out for a bit of education. But the bottom line was that the lad that was out for the education, he wasn't handy, and the one that was supposed to win in the canter was only 7th. So, and any lads that I met down there, I told them, you know, the way I'm after telling you, and sure, of course, they all backed the wrong horse, and some of them thought he was messing and told me I was everything bar a gentleman, you know. But that's the way it is, you go with horses.
Yeah, you say, well, horses, I remember getting tips myself from a gentleman one time, and I think it was 3 or 4 tips in a row I got, and I used to ring a friend of mine, and it's because I knew he'd be in around the bookies. And I'd say to him, throw on a bet there for me. And of course he'd bet on the same horse then, because he sure must be a good tip if he has it. Yeah. And after about the fourth run anyway, it was in Wexford races, coincidentally enough, that the fourth race was going on anyway. And he said to me, he rang me back afterwards and he says, that fucking horse, he said, is still running. He says, whoever you fell out with, would you ever stop taking tips off him, because he's out to destroy you.
Don't talk to him anymore.
No.
And I was just thinking when we were talking there, and other Wexford musicians that I knew well, there was a great mouth organ player down there called Phil Murphy.
Yeah.
And Phil has two sons, Pip and John. John has a pub, I won't be able to think of the name of the place, it's way below Wexford town anyway. And the two of them are great mouth organ players. And Leo Carty, I knew well. Leo was one of the Wexford mummers.
All right, yeah.
And he was a real good mouth organ player as well. So I'd want to be sitting down for a day to try and remember all the lads that I knew well down that country.
Well, sure, as you say, 45 years on the go with Foster and Allen, and then 20 years or whatever before that as well. Like,
honest to God, you see, this is the point. You'd be, you'd have met a lot of people over the years, that's for certain.
And if you were to, who would have been the biggest star that you would have met over the years then, if you were?
I suppose, well, as far as I'd be concerned, there wouldn't be any. I wouldn't even have to think would have been Jimmy Shand.
Yeah.
And to say that, you know, that you should never meet your heroes, because sometimes you can be disappointed. But God, you know, I met a lot of lads in my lifetime, and I never met anyone nicer than him. You know, a lad that if he wanted to go around with his head in there, he could have been probably the most famous accordion player of the last century. And, you know, when we'd be in Australia and New Zealand and places like that, went to a record shop and there'd be Jimmy Shand LPs or cassettes and then CDs in latter times. And I met him and used to go see him every year when we'd be in Scotland. And you couldn't meet nicer. And his son, Jimmy Jr., you know, the nicest people you could ever run into. And on the radio end of it then, and TV end of it, I suppose Terry Wogan, you wouldn't, I never met anyone nicer than him now. And you know, he made us in England. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have been heard tell of in England, you know, that kind of a way.
Yeah, he was very, very good at promoting Irish.
Oh, he was great. Him and Gloria Honeyford were great to us. And in Ireland, Val Joyce and Donegal Dooling, they would have been the two main men in Ireland that kind of looked after us and helped us along, and you know, gave us every opportunity that they could. Larry or Val on the radio and Donegal both on radio and television. So you know, we've a lot of lads to be thankful for too as well. You know.
Yeah, if you get a bit of support from the like of your Terry Wogans or your, anyone like Donegal Dooling, anyone like that that's able to, that is, shall we say, they're up the ladder and they're giving you a hand up, like.
And what a lot of people now, especially younger people, wouldn't realise was that, you know, years ago, if you got a play on the radio from whoever, everyone in Ireland heard you.
Yeah. Because
you only had the one radio station.
Yeah.
And if we got a spin on telly, everyone seen you because we only had the one channel.
Yeah, and of course.
So now, like, how many radio stations would you want to be on now, or television programs for everyone to see you?
Yeah. Of course, the Late was the big thing.
Oh, sure, it was great. I mean, in fairness to Gay Burton, he looked after us as well. And as I say, every time you were on the Late, everyone knew you were on.
Yeah.
And look, as I say, we met some lovely people along the line and some very helpful people. And look, we didn't really meet. There's no one we could really say, you know, that, well, that fella done nothing for us. But any of them like him, like Gay and Donegal and Val Joyce, they were all 100% who was, Lima Murku and Trumma Gazetrum.
Yeah.
That was the first. Now I had been doing radio and television since I was 15, all the trad programs, like Children at the Microphone and stuff like that. Our radio air and our RT radio was upstairs in the GPO at that time. And it wasn't out in Donnybrook at all. And but then the first time Tony and myself did television was with Lima Murku on Trumma Gazetrum from Athlone in 1977.
1977. When you think of it now, like, I mean, it's what is
43 years
ago. Yeah, 43 years ago.
Honest to God, like, there was a bit of a difference then than now, you know.
Yeah. Well, you're after getting better at the music, says you. I mean, you're after.
Well, look, I don't know whether we did or not, but I suppose our necks got harder as we went along. Major help.
Well, I'll tell you now, I have a few different people here that are mad to say hello to you. There's a gentleman, he's an accordion player from Sligo, Michael McGlowan. I don't know whether you know Michael or not now.
I don't think I know. Well, look, put it this way now, I would know a world of people and know them well, but wouldn't know their names. And if a lad says to me, do you know such a one, I could say no. And half an hour after they could see me drinking with them. The only Midlone that I would know well would be Enda from Oma.
All right.
He's a great tour up there. From Sligo, I suppose, Dahi Gormley and John Regan. John and myself, I suppose, would be the same vintage, or roughly. Dahi Gormley would be only a babby in comparison to us, but as I say, I would have met a world of musicians over the years and played at sessions with them and had the crack with them, and, you know, I would be a disaster for names, and I'll just tell you this one last joke, not to be annoying or hogging your program. A lot of years ago, we were in London, in Heathrow, and we were going on a tour, and we were pulling off suitcases and the usual carry on, and these 3 or 4 young lads, or 5, whatever they were, came over and started to chat, you know, and were we going on tour and whatever, and anyway, eventually they headed off, and I says to Tony, who's the Gothams? I never seen them before. They were Westlife. You know, and they could have hit me with a board and them on the shovel, and I wouldn't have been able to say who hit me. You know, I had no stuff like that. I wouldn't have had a clue. No, you know, if it was Joe Burke or someone, they came over, I'd know exactly who they were. But Paddy Maloney out with the Chiefs, any of them boys. But young lads doing, well, look at semi-pop, for want of a better word. Of course, the word pop is such. Yeah, honest to God. And I have a photograph here with Niall Horton.
One Direction, Niall.
One Direction. Niall is from Mullingar, you see, and he was very great with my granddaughter. And he came out here one day with her, and we were chatting, and he wanted to get a photograph taken with me, and the usual carry on. Yeah. And I was asking him, you know, what he was at, and he was saying he was after being on this program, and they were asking him to become part of a band. Yeah. And he said that he was going to do it, and they were rehearsing for their first tour. Yeah. At that time, and that was Westlife. And as I say, he was looking at gold discs and all that kind of carry on here in our house. And sure, now he'd fill a hay shed with them himself. Yeah. A good Mullingar man as well, as the fellow says. Sure, 100%. Yeah, he'd be dead on now, and he's probably doing better since he went out on his own than he was with One Direction.
Yeah,
he's flying.
Well, we have Ron Hinsley is over there in Wolverhampton in England, and he's listening in, and he says that A Bunch of Thyme was the first song that he learned to play on the guitar, and he says you haven't had one song that he hasn't liked in all the years. So.
Fair play to him. All I can tell him is that he has great taste. and fair play, keep it up.
And Liam in London says hello as well to you.
Fair play. Well, I'm glad they're listening in anyway. Be a joke if we were here talking to ourselves.
And Valerie Wild is listening in South Africa, so she might have seen you over the years as well. When you were out there.
She probably did. We went to South Africa first in 1985.
Yeah. And
the last time we were in South Africa was 2015.
Right. So there was a 30 years there then when you were playing.
We did a right few stints in South Africa, and the first time we went, we got into bother about it because there was apartheid there at the time, and of course I don't know whether you would know it or not, but lads from down our side, if you told them to go out the back door, they'd go out the front door.
Yeah.
And of course, the more they told us not to go, the more we decided we were going. Whether we were right or wrong, we said that sport and entertainment should not be. The apartheid was a political problem, nothing to do with entertainment or sport, and we went ahead with, no, we got into horrid bother when we came back and all stuff like that, and lads, we were on the late show, and there was lads backing us up, and there was lads saying that we should be shot and a whole lot of stuff like that, but like everything else, it blew over, and then we went back again several times.
What's this to say that today's newspaper is tomorrow's fish and chip wrapping?
Now you have it, and but sure, look, it's all in a lifetime, man.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, what's this to say? Experience is what you get when you don't get what you wanted.
Now you have it.
Yeah. So Michelle Orr she's from Bedford in England, and she said she has been to see you several times over the years. There was a gentleman friend of hers, Michael Tighe, who sadly died last year. Oh,
that's right, Mick. I knew Mick well, and all belonged to him. All Mick's people came from Multifarnham, which would be 15 minutes away from me here.
Yeah.
So I would have known him and his cousins, and his two brothers I know, and his cousins and all that, and I actually, going back far enough, I knew his granny. I actually played for his granny to dance.
All right.
So look I'm definitely giving away my age now,
21 and a little bit of VAT.
Now you have a good bit of VAT.
Yeah, the luxury tax, is that what they call it?
Well, that'd be for certain at this stage.
Now, there's Margaret Cleary is listening in there as well, and she says to say hello to you.
Fair play, Margaret. Keep it up.
And there's a gentleman called Simon Foster. He says he's no relation, but he's very proud of having the same name as yourself.
Yeah, well, I know Simon, and I know his father, Peter, and as he says himself, we're no relation, no relation that we know of, but I suppose all the Fosters probably, if you went back far enough, probably all came from the same place. Yeah. But I know them very well. That every time we tour the UK, you could see them at 3 or 4 or maybe 5 different concerts.
Yeah, so there'd be big fans and great fans.
They would be the best. They would be the best, and they're coming to hear us for years.
And Maureen Burke is up there in Leitrim, and she says to say hello to you as well.
Well, our guitar player is from Leitrim.
Yeah.
He's from Ballinamore, where he lives in Fena, and he's with us for the last 18 years.
My God.
So
the work conditions must be very good, or maybe you have good tea breaks or something, do you?
well, I don't know what we have, but our bass player is 38 year with us, and Myra is 28 year with us, and Brian is 18, and our sound engineer is 30 years. So we either must be easy enough to get on with, or you know, I don't know what it is, but and I mean, Tony and myself started playing together in 1967, and we're constantly together since 75, and we never had an argument even.
That'd be a very good.
And like none of us are placid, you know. We'd be Irish enough, the two of us, but never with one another. You know, we could hate someone else, but there was never a word between the two of us.
Well, that's a good complaint to have anyway. That is definitely.
Well, sure, look, it's a kind of a unique situation, I suppose, but
yeah,
it's one of these things for whatever reason. Whether we were mercenaries that we figured every pound that came in there was 10 shillings for me and 10 shillings for him. I don't really know what was the cause of it, but I suppose if a lad looked for 12 shillings and was going to give me 8, well then there could be a row, alright.
yeah, there could be sleeves rolled up then, and
there could be war.
But, well, I tell you, I'm just conscious of the fact that Joe Harrington is going to be on at 9 o'clock tonight, Mick, and we're getting very, very close to that time, and I could stay talking away here to you for another hour or two, no problem whatsoever.
I'd be no bother to travel. Look at, play a song for Seamus, Boogie and Dick Ling and their two wives, and all the mouth organ players down that neck of the woods, and sure, look at any lad that we know down that area.
Yellow bellies like myself now, that's, so they couldn't be too far wrong then.
No, well, as I say, Pip and John Murphy I would know fierce well, and the father, the late Phil, they didn't come any better than him, you know. The boys are great, but although the father was something else. And when we'd be down Wexford side, himself and his wife would come, and we'd have a bit of crack, and he'd play a few tunes for us, maybe in the van before we went to change our clothes, and he wrote some great tunes as well. So look at Wexford is full of great trad musicians, and men and women.
Yeah, surely is. It definitely surely is. Well, I tell you, I'm going to let you loose there then, Mick, and thanks a million. I'm absolutely delighted to have had you on, and I've really enjoyed the chat.
Anytime you want, you'll get me at the end of this phone.
Lovely. Well, thanks very much. I very much appreciate that. And
some nights you're stuck for someone to talk to, so you'll get me, do you know?
Because I tell you, give it a few months and we could be bringing you back on again for another chat.
Oh, there's no hassle at all. My pleasure.
And hello to Myra there and all the family as well, of course.
I will, of course, I will. I'll pass it on to her now.
Lovely. Well, I tell you, the conditions in the band must have been very good for her, because she stuck with you very well and even put a ring on the finger and all.
Oh, sure, look, this is the point now. We were married for 2 years, but we were practicing for 27 before we put it on, do you know? So, look, there you go. You have to make sure that these things are going to work out before you commit yourself.
You do. Well, thanks a million, Mick. I've enjoyed this immensely tonight. So thanks.
All right, me man, you take care and mind yourself.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Mick. Thank you. And this is one from Foster and Allen, and it is We All Owe It All to You.
1975, the journey did begin, with songs about the blacksmith and the rambles of spring.
Bringing you the best in country and Irish music. This is your station, irishcountrymusicradio.com.